Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you. Tonight we've got a great show lined up, and we have with us, see if we hopefully don't have a whole lot more issues again. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
We have Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
We have Tabby Cat Gash.
Hi, everybody.
And I want to thank everybody. We was having little problems getting our guest in here. Let me see if he's on yet. I will try and get him. If not, Tabby, won't you let everybody know?
What?
Tabby, somewhere.
I think she's trying to pull him into the room.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, you're trying to get him in? Okay.
Yep.
All right. She's going to try and do that. If you can't get him in, let me know, and I'll try and get him back again.
Okay.
And dead air is just a wonderful thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No dead air.
How about that?
But
We're still all here.
we have Tabby Cat, and we have Jeff, and we have Barbara.
Yep.
I want to thank everyone, and I got a quick thing to say before we actually get started. I hope everyone has remembered what the date today is and the meaning. It's been a bad time when that happened. I remember it plain as day, and it was just a terrible thing. So hopefully this is something that we will never forget, but we don't want to, I guess, keep it in the forefront either. It happened, it's over, and it's time to start healing everything. With that, we have, do we have our guest on now?
No, not yet. Still have a few technical difficulties.
All right.
I can do the bio, and
Again,
when he
why
comes,
don't
he's
why don't
in.
you go ahead and do that, and let me see what I can.
Well,
get
tonight, eventually, we have author Jeff Mudgett of Bloodstains, the story of his great-great-grandfather, who apparently wasn't so great, the notorious serial killer H. Holmes, and the TV docu-series American Ripper. So when he gets here, welcome Jeff Mudgett.
Okay.
So, all right.
Well, you might end up having to contact him on his phone.
Is that what he's saying?
I'm giving it a try.
Henry, go ahead and try. You try adding him to Skype.
Okay.
In the meantime, if everybody hasn't read, also there's a wonderful book out called Devil in the White City, along with Jeff Mudgett's Bloodstains book. Both are really good accounts of H. Holmes. Read them both, and each one is terrifying in its own right.
Well, Jeff has also co-authored a book called Haunts of the White City. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, The Devil in the White City is actually a novel, I think. Haunts of the White City, I believe, is,
Ghost stories from the World's Fair, the Great Fire, and Victorian Chicago.
Right. Which was a lot of fun.
The Great Fire? Oh, I guess
No.
we got a lot of marshmallows.
I mean, yeah, you figure all the tragedies that were happening there. Chicago was a wild place back in the day.
It still is.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. The only book I haven't read of Herbert Ashbery's was The Chicago Book.
Hello?
Yeah, Jeff.
Hello?
Oh, I
you
do
are-
believe
you are
we
now
are
with
in the
us.
vicinity of somewhere.
This is the Paranormal
Okay,
View, so
I have Henry Foister just came up on my Skype,
that's...
Yes.
Oh, really?
so I can say hi to.
Oh, okay.
Yay!
So you're in Skype.
Are you
then.
guys picking me up?
Yeah,
Oh,
We
yes,
are.
Sir.
yeah.
Welcome to the show. Already in progress.
Fantastic.
All right, then. That's good.
I don't have a video yet.
That's
we aren't
okay.
using, we don't use
technically
video.
do video.
We don't.
We're all
Oh,
in our
okay.
pajamas anyway, Jeff, so it really wouldn't
Or less.
Well, I want to
I
welcome you.
actually kind of called dibs on an early question. I was looking up your books because I read a synopsis and I put in the links to authors' books and such on Amazon, and I couldn't help noticing that your book Bloodstains is $6 on Kindle, but its paperback is $396.01. What?
Wow.
I mean, is
You know,
it that or just Kindle doesn't know how to price right?
It's that much of a collector's item already. Okay. Now, actually, to tell you the truth, I'm not in the book business anymore, and Amazon still sells a Kindle for me, but I don't really sell print copies anymore. I've been doing that for over 10 years now, and I've got a few out in the garage, but that's about it. And one day if someone asks me to print out some more, I might. But I set that all aside. And to tell you the truth, it was a lot of work. We sold almost 25,000 copies.
Wow.
It was a lot of work, but there wasn't much to it at the end of the day. By the time you got through with everything, and actually, I'm doing my best for climate change, saving the trees, and having Amazon help me with Kindle.
That's very noble. And actually, Kindle's actually a very expedited way of getting a book out. You're not waiting for a copy in the mail, although Amazon makes it pretty darn fast. But still, I can download and read your book in a couple of minutes.
I read books off my laptop all the time now, and I actually quite enjoy it. But I didn't want to bore your listeners with my economics about book sales. But hey, I want to thank you all for having me on the show tonight, especially on this solemn day, which I've been watching all the playbacks of what happened 20 years ago, and it's quite an honor for you guys to have me on today. Even though I have nothing to do with that at all, except that what a day in American history. And it sure seems like everybody is giving it the proper respect today and treating everybody kindly.
Well,
you bring that up, and it's a point that should be made, that there are events in American history that have long-lasting social impacts. And this being one of them. Certainly, what happened in the day of around the Chicago World's Fair was also having a major social impact. So there's these footnotes in American history, right?
That's a good point. And when I go to shows now or asked to come on podcasts, I try to explain that to people. We had an event in the 1890s where millions of people from all around the world came to Chicago for that World's Fair. And, from the first Ferris wheel, you could see over the top of the closest buildings, and you could actually see Holmes's hotel, where the post office is now. And it for me, that's quite unnerving, in that we possibly have the most evil American that ever lived right there, enjoying the fruits of perhaps the most, attended event in American history, and from all over the world. So it was something that, knowing how he thought a little bit, he had planned it out. He knew what was coming. Some of his partners and friendships and business acquaintances were in the Chicago politics and business that, were setting that entire thing up. And he had his hotel ready for that. And, when I go on shows, there's a lot that want to argue with me about how many he actually killed, whether it was 9, whether it was 13, whether it was 27, 54, or 200. And I really don't know. I know whatever the number was, it was enough to be, considered the evil that he was. But all I know is that most historians and authors and the people that research Holmes as an obsession in their life will agree that there were hundreds of people that were acquainted with him, that had business relationships with him, or stayed at his hotel and went missing. And we still can't find, and probably never will find, what happened to those people. Unfortunately for me, I think there's a connection. It's not just another coincidence. And I don't know if we'll ever find out the actual facts or data, just that it seems such a strange coincidence in American history.
Yeah.
Now
he also had connections with various universities. Wasn't he selling the skeletons?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was one of his business. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a book signing in Indiana, and one of the medical school department superintendent came from Iowa, and he wanted me to sign his book. And then he told me that after he'd read the book, he had been quite fascinated with their medical department's museum, and he had done some research, and he had come all that way to tell me that they had removed the skeleton from the museum on fears that it had been bought from Holmes in the 1890s.
Wow.
And they gave it a proper funeral. They didn't know who it was, but they gave it a proper funeral, which I thought was pretty cool.
This is where it comes in handy, keeping the receipt.
Yeah.
So, you say this was H.H. Holmes? Didn't he kill people over in London and then come over here?
Well, that's what American Ripper was about. It took me a couple of years to do it, but with the help of Magilla Productions, we talked history into allowing us to produce that miniseries, American Ripper, about my theory that Holmes was also Jack the Ripper. And to their credit, history spent a lot of money. They did a great job, except for the final episode, which everyone admits was pure chaos. But their recreations of Holmes in London, which we could prove he went to London, and we could prove that he was in business there, and his business here in the States was all terrible. It was all involving corpses. It was all involving life insurance fraud. It was all involving murder. So, and the actor that history hired to play Holmes and Ripper over there was just fantastic. And if you ever get the chance to watch it again, pay particular attention to their recreations of the 1888 London scenes, which I think are some of the best Jack the Ripper scenes ever made.
Well, I thought that they had caught him in London and he was killed there.
No, that's where there's 100 different theories for how and why after, Jack the Ripper is supposedly involving one man and 5 victims. And over a very short period of time, really. And then it just stops without anyone having been arrested. Or
it's only about 2 or 3 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 months. And the theory that I had with history, and we all sat and we all discussed it, and I'm probably not supposed to be talking to you about this now, but no, what the heck. They were of the opinion, and their historians, excellent historians on Ripper, they all believed that the one man killed the 5 victims. It was my opinion that there was a copycat involved, and that Holmes had gone to London on business. He had watched the papers just exploding with the first 2 murders, the Nichols and the Chapman murders, but the first 2 that occurred, and how it was just front page news over. And London was the biggest metropolitan in the world at the time. Maybe not Paris, but close. And he was fascinated with the attention that whoever it was getting over there. It was my theory that he had written the Dear Boss letter, which I had been contacted by historians in America for 2 or 3 years when they found out that I was writing Bloodstains. They contacted me and said that they had been working on proving that Holmes had written the Dear Boss letter, that it wasn't a journalistic hoax, and that he had murdered Catherine Eddowes, the number 3 victim. 3 or 4, however, those 2 fit in. That, you know, they're historians will tell you that it was possible, but they were committed within 1 hour of each other. And you know, with that image in your head of this Jack the Ripper killer in this cape and hat and cane, doing a 100-yard dash across London in order to be at the next crime scene to make it all work. It just doesn't work. And so many ripperologists have said that, you know, they didn't believe that number 4 had been done by the same man. So, you know, we had put the handwriting together. I had gone to scientists at the University of Buffalo, the world famous scientists involving handwriting, who were hired routinely by the FBI and Scotland Yard. And they agreed to run Holmes's handwriting in with the Dear Boss letter, and came back with some remarkable numbers, which I don't know if any of you on the show watched, but I did a TEDx talk in Vancouver about the handwriting to the audience. Mm-hmm. And it came back 97%. They
Holy
took me
smoke.
aside. Yeah, no, and then, you know, and I just still don't get credit for that. And I don't know why. People like to blow that off because it works out too well, I think. But the scientists came back to me and said, listen, you know, we did this as a favor almost for you. If you fund us with us rerunning our programs to handle the font from the 1888s in America and in London, we'll be able to tell you absolutely who if it was or wasn't. And I was like, wow. I said, okay, you know, I was thinking, no, $600-700. No, it wasn't $600 or $700. It was, you know, $100,000. And so I told them, no, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't get history to do that when American Ripper came up. Yeah. So it was that's still there for someone to do one day, and it's the University of Buffalo. Cedar Fox is the name of the corporation, and that's what they do for a living. And they're hired by the greatest crime units in the world to do their work in court.
Wow. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. The one thing that I thought was rather interesting, Jeff, and I think I had spoken to you once before about this, was that with Holmes's fascination with death and the fact that he even admitted that he did his first murder when he was a child, he had supposedly murdered one of his own cousins. He had this fascination with death throughout his entire life. And once he got to London, and whoever it was that was killing these women, with his ego, with the way this man thought, if he did do one of those murders while he was in London, and in my opinion, I'm pretty sure he probably did, and writing the Dear Boss letter, he was taunting them by saying, hey, look, you know, you guys are looking in the wrong direction. And I did this, but you're not looking at me. You're looking at the wrong person.
Well,
that's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, I think, that's a home run you hit. And that's what I was trying to get history and the production crew to understand that they didn't want to break off into copycats, and they wanted to keep it, the Jack the Ripper is probably the most renowned, infamous, true crime series of events in world history, period. And if you went and did a poll on it now, there's probably 2 or 3 billion human beings that could tell you what Jack the Ripper is. And, that's quite unusual. So they were spending a lot of money on American Ripper. It got prohibitively expensive when we got into the exhumation at the end. So they were trying to get their money back, which is that's their business. That's fair. I don't hold anything against them on that. But it started branching off into where it wasn't going to be an 8-part miniseries anymore, and they were making executive decisions. And I think I'll tell you another if we've got time, another interesting story. We were in London preparing for the next day's shoot, and I got to tell you, the 2 weeks we were there filming for a Ripper in London were some of my favorite of my life. I got treated like a king. We stayed in these 7-star hotels. I had someone carrying my bag around for me. It was really, I got to see what being a movie star was kind of like a little bit. And I quite liked it. And then I had my best friend now in my life, Amaryllis, my co-host. You remember Amaryllis Fox on the show?
Uh-huh.
She just had a new baby the other day. And
nice.
She married a Kennedy, Robert Kennedy III.
Oh.
And her wedding was at Hyannisport on the grass that President Kennedy and Jacqueline were enjoying when they were alive.
Nice.
And when he was alive. And now they live on the coast in California, off where all the movie and where Prince the prince lives now that left London. And anyway, so I was hanging out with Amaryllis, and she's ex-CIA, so I always called her Scully. I mean, she was the perfect real-life Scully. It was so fun, and she was brilliant. She knew how to investigate. Her handling of evidence was exceptional. It was just a lot of fun. And then we'd go down and have a drink, and it was just a lot of fun. So the film crew was planning the next day's shoot, and I was up at the bar across the lobby from them, and these 2 agents came over in suit and ties, young guys, 28, 29, English, and they, Mr. Mudgett, we'd like to introduce ourselves. And I was like, oh, did the IRS come over to London now for me? Or so I was like nervous about this. And they said, no, we're from Scotland Yard. And we just want to let you know that we've been following the events here, the filming. We completely disagree with your theory that Ripper was an American doctor. We're convinced he was an Englishman. They were quite proud of it, almost seemingly. And he said, but we want you to know there was at least one copycat involved. There was not 1 man and 5 killings, as world history has led humanity to believe over all these years.
Ta-da.
So I thought that was, and so I ran that over to the guys and the gals at the production crew, and they called up, the bosses, and the bosses said, no, keep it the way it is. So that's how we ran it.
Wow.
That's TV.
Well, I guess
that's TV.
that would have been another story altogether,
Yeah.
I suppose. So they just kind of wanted to keep it true to what was going on. Now, when you and Amaryllis Fox got together to do this documentary, did you have any idea that it was going to lead up to how it finally ended? I mean, there was just so much involved, and the 2 of you went to so many places to do this research and interviewed so many people. Did you have any idea that it was going to be this extensive?
No, I didn't. And, the history is probably the granddaddy of all the networks that do these kinds of shows. And They wanted to keep it true crime. They didn't want it to branch off into paranormal. Although they're doing paranormal now, if you follow their network schedules. And they actually were going to give me my chance at proving my great-great-grandfather was Jack the Ripper. They were going to put the money up and give me the chance. And I, you know, at the end, we talked about. I said, listen, you know, I'm of the impression that, you know, we've gone pretty far with this. We haven't proven anything. I don't think much of the world's going to accept it. I know most of the production crew didn't. They all thought Jack the Ripper was an Englishman. And I said, but, you know, there's a chance. There's a chance that if we exhume that grave and prove that it wasn't him there, we may come up with evidence that ties it into the London connection. And that's the kind of stuff the history was really, they were big on. You know, they'd taken a big chance with Amelia Earhart, and they'd had their knuckles skinned over that. And they were still afraid of that. They were still quite concerned that it would happen again with this. So they were very cautious. But they were also very big on, they knew that I had practiced courtroom law in California before, and they were very excited about this being done as if evidence were being presented to a jury, and the jury was our audience.
Yeah, that's the way it came across to me, and I thought that was the most fascinating. It was like sitting there and having people present not just their opinions, but facts. You know, sitting down and saying, this is what we found, and this is how it connects. And that's how law enforcement solves crimes, is to take all the facts and all of the little pieces and put them together and make a cohesion of a story. And that's what you guys did, and that's why I thought it was just fascinating.
Well, and then you throw in Amaryllis, who was trained by the CIA to investigate, and you know, we had quite a team going. And then my connection to him, you know, personal connection, and my ability to get the family to consent with the exhumation, because I had to, you know, and history paid for this too. I had to go get the consent of all my family. If one of them had said no, it wasn't going to happen. The judge wasn't going to allow it. Yeah. And so, you know, it was quite an ordeal. And like you say, it was treated very factually until the end, which disappointed me greatly. But the show, you know, that last episode, we had over 1.5 million people watching in the States. And then when they ran it in the UK, it had 1.5 million in the UK. Yeah. It was accepted quite. They loved it in the UK. They even ran it 3 times.
So H.H. Holmes was from England, right?
He was English. Yeah, if you went back far enough, my family, it would probably Wales.
Okay, but
he was mostly Ohio, wasn't he? Wasn't that?
Well, remember, H.H. Holmes was just some name he pulled out of a hat.
Sure.
His name was Mudgett, and he had 41 different aliases.
That many?
41 different aliases. One of the great Chicago historians that has done a lot of work on Holmes, Adam Selzer, did that research for me 10 years ago about how many aliases Holmes had.
Jeez, no wonder he got away with so many insurance frauds. Wow.
And he, about that many girlfriends, too, right?
And wives. You know, if you call them wives, he didn't even bother divorcing some of them. He killed a couple. But he was, that's where I think it seems like the world is kind of starting to appreciate the character that Holmes was now. We all, when I go to the shows, they all want to try to lump the serial killers into one big pile, like Gacy and Bundy and the smiley face killer. those things. And Holmes is not one of those at all. He's evil. He's pure evil. But he never had some event in his childhood that caused him to go that direction. He never had some father that beat him to within an inch of his life that caused him to hate the world. As he said in his book, he was born evil, and he knew it as soon as he got cognitive thought about what his character was unique from everyone else. But he had this ability to manipulate other human beings and then engineer these frauds. And if you ever, and you and your audience ever want to read a fascinating account, there's a book by another Chicago historian. His name is escaping me now. He's going to hate me. But he wrote a book, and he covered all the transcripts from the trial, the murder trial, where Holmes fired his lawyers and conducted his own defense. Wow. The judge ordered him to take his lawyers back, and Holmes said, okay, and then he told them both to sit down and shut up and conducted his own defense anyway. That's what he was. And then the deal that he had made with the district attorney about how the conviction was going to come down and how the judge was going to sentence him to death. And it's such an amazing story. And I think finally the world's starting to realize that this man is something to be studied, not just that he's a unique character and something Hollywood should make a movie about, but that it might be something, if we learned from it, we might be able to see it coming again at us, to where it doesn't come up someone like this that was a doctor at the University of Michigan that could have been anything he wanted to be in life. Maybe next time it's a politician, and that maybe Holmes will teach us something that we can maybe predict that again one day.
So how did you find out that you were related?
When did I find out?
No, how? How did you start?
Well, I
making the
actually
connection?
Have any of you read Bloodstains?
No.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I actually the Bloodstains is fiction based on a true story. There were huge gaps in the story, and rather than being like other nonfiction authors who I have a bone to pick with, I called it fiction based on a true story because I filled in some of those gaps with my imagination. And when my grandfather died, Bertram Mudgett, who my grandfather was Holmes's grandson. Okay, so my grandfather's grandfather was this evil man, and he was a very successful executive at Pacific Gas and Electric in California. He was an electrical engineer, and he created power for most of the state of California. But he maybe talked to me twice in my life. Very cold, very quiet, very ungrandfather-like. He used to go fishing on the weekends, and I covered this in the book, and he knew that was my thing in life, to go fishing. He never asked his grandson to go fishing. So you can imagine how, as a little boy, I'm growing up, and these things you go to bed with these things, and they kind of bug you. So I set him out of my life. When he died, I didn't go to his funeral. Stayed home and played in the tool bench in the garage. And my father drove up, who had gone to the funeral. And he said, "Hey, Dad left these for you." And he dropped a couple of fishing tackle boxes at my feet. And in the fishing tackle boxes, there were hidden at the bottom, there were correspondence, postcards, things like that had been involved with Holmes. And my grandfather had intentionally left those for me. And that's kind of why I wrote the book. I think he wanted me to write the book and maybe do these investigations about who is really in that grave, whether he actually was executed, and what things, and whether he was Jack the Ripper. Although I don't think my grandfather had any idea about that. But just to investigate the true story of the whole thing and the mystery that was his father. Because, the whole family, his murder trial was covered by maybe every major newspaper in America, even the London papers. And when he was, found guilty and sentenced to death, he'd had his appeal. They ran it up. They allegedly hung him. The entire family moved to California to get away from the stigma of having that thing in their background. And they were quite lucky that he had used H.H. Holmes as his name rather than the real name all his criminal life.
Yeah.
So when he was tried as H.H. Holmes or as
both? Both. It's very unusual. It's very unusual. I mean, officially on the documents it's Mudgett, but in the courtroom, in the transcripts, they're calling him Holmes.
Wow.
Yeah.
At the risk of, and I don't want to romanticize a serial killer like that, but he was of a different ilk. He was around that age, the era of Franz Mesmer, and I think, didn't he kind of take on that persona of overpowering people? And he had that aura about him?
See, now, I know exactly why you were being cautious, because it's an evil that you don't want anyone listening to think that I brandeise. He was an artist, all right? There was no bloodlust involved in any of his murders. They were for a purpose, and usually to make money. And each murder was a painting that he would frame practically and set aside for the next. But it was very unusual. I still find it hard to believe that a human being could think like that, and that's why the psychologists back at the time, they had to come up with a term for this. They had to invent that psychopathic thing, that thing about this living being that doesn't have emotion or chill or sorrow for anything he's done.
Yeah, I think they call it a sociopath. I think today's term is sociopath.
Those things both, whenever I try to define, they confuse me. And I tell you what, when I go on shows and there are some kind of doctor there, I'm always amazed at how often they seem confused about them too. But it certainly defined him. He was not sorry about anything he ever did.
No.
Oh, it doesn't seem to be. And I find it interesting, too, that if you look, I think it's the second Sherlock Holmes movie, the modern ones with Robert Downey Jr. in it, where they take almost that persona of H.H. Holmes right down to how they buried this person and the fact that the person wasn't in the grave. So.
Yeah. Wow, I never even thought of that. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that, Barbara. That's cool. I'd forgotten all about that.
Tell you the truth, I didn't know there was a connection either with that. And now you've got me. I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go stream that tonight too.
He had the same type of personality, which was overpowering people, making suggestions to the point where he was switched at the last moment, and another person went to the gallows. So it fascinates me that even in death and through fiction and your writings too, people are picking up on that type of evil.
Oh, I've always thought that that Dr. Frankenstein thing, the doctor in the basement, in the gallows, conducting his medical experiments. He was. I don't know when you listen to the district attorney lecturing the jury on his closing argument at the trial. He actually describes Holmes and his team, his young assistants, how they would conduct a life insurance fraud. And that's what they made a living doing. And he actually had a doctor/coroner in New York City that he would send the specifications for the next substitution of corpse, and this man would come up with a corpse that fit Holmes's needs. And this is not me making this up in a fictional account. This is the district attorney Graham lecturing the jury at the murder trial. And I just don't think there's ever been anything like it, ever before or since.
Well, then why in the heck would anybody refute the possibility that he switched with somebody else and there is somebody else in that coffin? I mean, he said it right there, what he was capable of doing. Yes, he bragged about it. So why not do it on your death? That is the ultimate con. Oh, wow.
I have one of the networks we're working with them now about a documentary actually allowing me to tell the Holmes story the way I wanted to tell it the whole time. And if I get the chance, and if they have the courage to do it, it's going to include, those closing arguments to the jury by the district attorney, and then the step-by-step of Holmes and his team following the exact moves in the substitution of the corpse.
Oh, God.
And to me, I don't understand why the world's been so hesitant at trying it. What I found out, and maybe Henry, you can help me with this, but what I found out was in history on something like Holmes, once someone makes up their mind about the facts, the data, the conclusion that we're going to reach, and how history is going to be accept and write it out. Once history accepted, and I'm not talking about history of the network, I'm talking about overall. Once everyone accepted that this was a crazy conspiracy theory by the great-great-grandson of H.H. Holmes in order for him to sell a movie to Hollywood so he makes another $1 million that someone else did before, that we can't believe this, that it was Holmes in the grave no matter what the evidence comes out. And that's what the television show turned into at the end. And I'm hoping that I'd really love one day for history to knock on my door and say, we've been looking at the evidence and we want to take a second look with you at this stuff. We think there's a possibility that this crafty little devil did the same thing he used to make a living in life on his own body.
So,
and what a show that would be, no?
So how and when did H.H. Holmes die?
I have a picture of my grandfather and his brother at a grave outside of Los Angeles in 1961. It's a black and white picture, and the headstone is H.H. Hoyster is on the headstone. And it's the family's theory that he moved west after the great part about the Holmes, the substitution of corpse story. And if I can get the world to let me show the evidence, I think, which proves it wasn't him, and this is a big step, proving that it wasn't Holmes in the grave, Cat, does not prove that he escaped execution. Okay? It just means that there was a switch out somewhere along the line.
Right. Yeah.
And whether we could ever prove that he escaped execution in prison, I don't know. It's a great theory to go with if you prove that it's not him in the grave.
So go
ahead.
When did Jack the Ripper commit the murders in London?
1888.
1888. That means he had to been really old if he was still.
No. Holmes would have been 27.
And you didn't know him at 27.
I didn't what?
I said you didn't know him when he was only 27.
Well,
No, no,
great,
but
great grandfather. Yeah.
the great.
You're on that. You got to put roll the century back one, Henry, because I was born in 1957.
That's what I mean.
When in 1957?
March
What?
19th.
Because I was born April 29th, 1957.
Okay, well, we're close. We're close.
I've got 10 years onions.
Well, Jeff, when it comes down to you were talking about how Holmes, the way he was born, he said he was born with the devil in him, and committing some type of bloodthirst. Bloodthirsty is not the word for it, because that isn't what he did. He seemed to have a methodical way about doing things, and throughout his entire life, even after he was supposedly executed on that particular date, wasn't there a series of very unexplained deaths that occurred among the people that were involved in his trial?
Oh yeah, and for a long time that was one of the ways that historians would stay away from that. But it was called the Holmes curse, that people associated with him during his their chase of him across country, but his final arrest, his trial, his prison time, and then the execution. Those that were involved with him, that irritated him, many suffered death or misfortune or disappearance, and it was called this thing called the Holmes curse. Now, what's always fascinated me about that story, Kat, is I'm convinced there was no curse. I'm convinced the man substituted the body. He escaped the execution and the prison, and then went back and visited these people that had upset him. And there was nothing cursed or supernatural about it.
Yeah.
It's quite the story.
If I could,
just even the prison superintendent. 2 months later, the same man that didn't allow them to pull the hood up over his head once the body was hung.
Really?
He blew his own brains out, supposedly, 2 months later, up in the office at the prison.
Oh, how convenient.
Yeah, there's just coincidence and coincidence and coincidence over and over and over again. And if if you've read my book, you know how I like to imagine, and those things run wild in my head, and I'm quite convinced there's something there. It's just we got to get over those first two hurdles where people don't want to give me the chance of considering the evidence that there was something going on here, and this was the engineer of all time to do it, and that's what he did for a living, and it's not that inconceivable that he did it to save his own life.
Because whatever happened to his co-conspirators throughout all of this?
Oh, yeah.
Many died, but a couple of his closest did not.
Could they have been part of the whole scenario of the bait and switch?
They would have had to have been. He couldn't have done it from this prison cell by himself. When my grandfather also left me, I never had the Holmes diaries like I wrote about in Bloodstains. I had the correspondence and those type of things, and I juiced it up to the diaries. But I did have a diary from his first wife, who wrote about going to visit Herman in prison 3 times. And each time after the visit, she would go to Chicago, stay 2 or 3 days, then go right back to prison to see Herman. I'm convinced those were cash runs.
Yeah. Not only that, but just getting information and relaying information.
Okay, and of the people that he needed for the exercise to work, and then he also convinced the Hearst Corporation to come interview him in prison to help him with his autobiography, and they paid him $7,500 in a time when one of the greatest depressions in American history was ongoing.
Yeah,
he was a fabulously wealthy man in prison.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to figure that with that kind of money. And let's face it, you either had, now I doubt very seriously if the man was given cash in prison because somebody would want to take it from him, but he had to have had an account somewhere that Hearst and the others paid him, and somebody else would have had to have access to those bank accounts in order to do anything with. And let's face it, money talks. And, back then, even as it is now, if you paid somebody enough money to turn away when something was happening, they're willing to take it. And back then, in the late 1800s, the Edwardian period of time, people weren't making a whole lot of money. Police officers, prison officials, and everything, they weren't making a lot of money. So to them, if you offered them, say, $200-300, they're going to turn a blind eye. And so to me, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that Holmes's wife and some of his other associates weren't keeping his money. They were paying off people. And they were making all these arrangements. That's his M.O. I mean, it's plain and simple. That's his M.O. It doesn't surprise me a bit.
And that's what I believe.
Now, when it comes to Jeff Mudgett himself, H.H. Holmes, Henry Mudgett. I'm sorry, not Jeff. Henry Mudgett. He had a degree in medicine, didn't he?
Yes, full medical degree from University of Michigan.
Okay, and so with that in mind, he had a very extensive knowledge of anatomy, and he was fascinated with it. And when you look at the sociopath sort of personality that he had and not feeling anything, he disassociated himself from a human body. And to him, it was just something to look at, something to explore. So I could kind of understand, excuse that expression, but I could kind of understand his logic and his thought, where to him, a human being was just something to explore, just to, and if he could make money off of it, hey, so much the better.
He believed that crime and committing murder was his quickest way to make the money he wanted. I don't know what he wanted to do in life. I don't know what his purpose was. I don't know if anyone's ever read anything of him explaining what his dream, or if he had any. All I know is that, of the many ways he could have made a living, he certainly chose the one that was the sorrowest for a human being to do, especially with one with such a mind, who I'm convinced if you stacked him up with IQs, he's probably right up there with some of the tops of all time.
Yeah.
Now, we have a great comment in chat, and I wanted to explore this a little bit, which is about the wives. And after everything that he did, she was wondering, you'd think that she would hate him for that, but he didn't attract virtuous people into his life very much. And maybe you can talk a little bit about his companionship.
I don't know if I would be able to explain why some women are attracted to this type of man. I don't know anything about that. I do know that I once read, and you're exactly right. Why would the woman that he abandoned with a child and left in New Hampshire and gone off to his fame and fortune in the Midwest help him at his direst time of need there before execution? So why would she do that when she knew he had 4 or 5 other wives? There was an account at the of the trial by one of the many major newspaper reporters that were there, and it was after the jury had rendered the verdict. It was after the judge had decided on sentence and had ordered the bailiffs with him out as he was being let off in chains. The reporter detailed how the women in the audience, and he assumed that they had been intimate with Holmes before somehow, all rose to stand and had crocodile tears on their faces while the murder was being let off. And how this happens or how this works or why it happens, I'm certainly not the one to give you much on that.
Oof. Kind of gives me chills because I have not only in your book, Jeff, but there's other accounts of H.H. Holmes where it was said that even though he wasn't exactly what you would refer to as the most handsome man, but for that period of time, apparently, however way he carried himself, his upbringing, the way he spoke, the way he used his gestures and everything, it was something that would be, I guess, by today's standards for a female, an alluring or a sexual sort of thing. And so to some women, especially, for some women that don't really have a great number of men in their lives, for somebody like him to kind of get into their heads, to pay a great deal of attention to them, they would feel special. They would feel wanted and needed and depended upon and relied on. And so to them, they would just feel, okay, well, even though he's this nasty so-and-so, he treated me so well that I have to feel sorry for him. And that might be the case.
I always think of him when I see Silence of the Lambs and Anthony Hopkins. I always think of my great-great-grandfather and that elegance and that ability to tap, the wants and needs of another human being. I think Holmes was just a natural at that stuff. There's a great article written by Harper's back in I think it was 1927 or 37 it was written, but it's an incredible description of how Holmes carried himself around Chicago before all the knowledge came out. And it's a great description of this monster amongst us and how he fooled everyone that was involved with him.
Just one of those kind of personalities. Ugh, kind of gives me the creeps, though.
Yeah.
But he had
I think there's been others like him in history, though. Yeah. They just, weren't serial killers. But I think there's been others like him.
Ted Bundy was certainly one of them. I mean, look at all the people that he seduced and did something to. Ugh.
Well, I mean, personality-wise, I'm thinking more along the lines of David Koresh and Jim Jones.
Yes.
Where
yes.
he gathered I'm not going to call them innocent because they weren't. I think even in your book, I think you suggested that some of his girlfriends' wives actually recruited other people to kill. So it seems to me that he chose his victims and his accomplices pretty darn carefully, wouldn't you think, Jeff?
Yeah, and what you just brought up was true, but you have to understand, I was assuming that conversation Holmes had with one of his wives. I wasn't there for it, so there's parts of it that I was imagining probably something like that happened. But to have been able to sit back and listen to him explain what he wanted from one of his assistants for them to do in order for him to carry out one of his frauds or crimes was probably incredible to witness and behold. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone ever did that survived it.
Mm-hmm.
So
but I guess, yeah, we kind of can now with, like I said, if you listen to David Koresh or Jim Jones's speeches, you can see how they manipulated people right down to drinking the Kool-Aid, pretty much.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
It kind of, you kind of get a taste for what this person may have been like, although, of course, you're right, we're never going to know because we weren't there.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break, and
all right.
It'll be about 5-6 minutes long. Just remember, Jeff, that our mics will be live, so don't say anything. So it'll be about 5-6 minutes, and when I come back on talking is when you'll hear and know that we're back on. But what I'm going to do is play music, so you probably won't hear it because you're in with us. So it'll be kind of like dead air until I start talking again. So with that, just remember though, your mic's live, so don't say anything.
Don't be concerned, grandfather, not to say anything while the mic's on either. Okay, so
that's it. All right, Jeff, you want to take us out?
All right. Well, I tell you what, this is I'm enjoying this tremendously.
Let's
very to the point, and and you know what? I can't wait for another hour. Let's do it.
Okay, well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on power-x.com with hosts Henry Foister, Cat Barbara Duncan, Tabby Cat Gash, and myself, Jeffrey Gould. Author View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
And we got Tabby Cat Gash.
How you doing?
And we have, I believe he is still on, Jeffrey Gould.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hello.
Good. Jeffrey, brother, I'm going to have to get those two names straightened out there, ain't I? Go ahead and introduce our guest.
Jeff Mudgett, author of Bloodstains, about his great-great-grandfather, H.H. Holmes. Welcome. None of that went through, did it?
Some of it, not much.
Sort of.
A little. Jeff Mudgett.
Jeff, that came through about about like a Class B EVP.
Oh, great.
All right, Jeff Mudgett, you still on?
Yeah, and you know what? Let me apologize. I stepped all over Jeff's exit there on our break, so I probably set the whole thing in motion.
Well,
so it's my fault.
It was my fault. I should have said Jeffrey instead of Jeff. That was my. I'll take the blame for that.
Well, I don't know. You have a you have a good voice there, and a good calling for radio. So great outro.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jeff, when it comes down to you're finding out about who H.H. Holmes was. You said you learned about it from your relatives, and of course, finding out that a notorious serial killer isn't exactly the most pleasant thing to find out about around a table or whatever. But what was it that you decided was your reason for doing the research and actually finding out the facts about this particular person?
These are interesting. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and these are the questions I received at the Michigan Paracon and yours now. People seem to be more interested now in when I started realizing I was different than others, and this knowledge of having this thing behind me, and whether it affected my life or the decisions that I made. And I think those are, my grandfather never told my grandmother about H.H. Holmes. She wouldn't have married him. Okay, that's the way my grandmother was.
What?
No way. If she'd have known, she was very religious, to every Sunday church, those things. Would have been a tough cross to bear, excuse the pun, but that wouldn't have worked, and he knew it. And he never told her either until the end. So I think, the rest of the family all decided they were just going to continue on with life, just as if nothing had ever happened, and just keep it going the way it was. And I just decided I didn't like the stories that were being told. I didn't like the books that were being written about this thing, not even calling him a man. And I also didn't want to think that someone thought I was afraid to tell the world that, yeah, that's who I am, but I had nothing to do with it, and it didn't change my life other than me wanting to find out the truth.
Yeah.
And so, it's, there are times when my mom has taken me aside and asked me, you're thinking back, do you wish you just kept practicing law and just forgotten all about this? So sometimes I don't know. It's those are those things. I tell you what, though, there's a Hollywood group that's interested in Bloodstains, and do you all remember one of my favorite television shows of all time was Dexter?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
For obvious reasons, I like Dexter.
Yeah,
and
strange
and
personality.
But those first two seasons were just riveting, no?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And then it got strange, but they all do. This Hollywood group's interested in this man finding out at 40 why his instincts, why his impulses, why his characteristics, these unique things that he thought, that's the way everybody thought. They're different, and they're different for a reason. Yeah. And they want to run with that, and they asked me if they got permission to make a movie like that. And I said, hey, go for it. They're going to make a big time Dexter with an H.H. Holmes in the background. I think it'd be a great motion picture, and I think a lot of people would go see it.
Yeah.
But you're bringing up a good point about the psychology of family after this, and I believe Charles Manson has a son. There's other people that obviously would have to go through this, right? The same as you was with that stigma, and whether or not, you do the whole genetic testing, is there some sort of genetic trait that causes people to go berserk like this? And it kind of makes you wonder about,
Well, like I said earlier, I had to have permission from every family member. The judge, the Pennsylvania judge that allowed the exhumation on American Ripper, and the University of Pennsylvania anthropologist to dig it up with us on TV. I had to go get the consent of my family, and they had to sign off on it. And they all wanted to know the truth also. They all wanted to know if it was him or not. And I don't know, the things about, I still don't know if we have it right about what causes a serial killer, what causes a Hitler, or one of those characteristics that go down in history as these terrible things. And maybe one day someone will divulge enough evidence, enough facts, enough data that we learn a little bit more about it. And I wouldn't mind if it was me and H.H. Holmes, and finding out what caused a man that could have been anything he wanted to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like
go this way.
all those physicians that for the longest time, they took photographs and measurements and everything of people's skulls and their facial features and everything. And they came to the conclusion that certain people had these traits about them that were criminals. A certain facial features, certain brow ridges and things like that. These were all criminals. And nowadays, we take a look at some of these people that are criminals that have done some absolutely horrendous things. And the first thing you think of is, man, that could have been my neighbor. He could have been anybody. So it really doesn't fit the bill. But getting back to, DNA and so forth, I think what really got to me at the end of American Ripper was all of these so-called conclusions that all of these testing did. What they supposedly came to the conclusion of. But at the same time, it was not definitive. And it's like saying, yeah, but. And when you look at how the body that was exhumed, the fact that Holmes wanted to have whatever it was, whoever it was, covered in concrete.
Yeah.
You got to figure that they were not wanting somebody to dig that sucker up. And if they did, it wouldn't be very recognizable. But, just out of curiosity, the findings that they did on the DNA and, whatever it was that they took from the skeleton in that grave, when they tested that against the DNA of what was in the grave and what was taken from you, and I believe it was your father, I found it interesting the way they worded what their conclusion was.
And you know what? Their conclusion was very craftily worded by a New York trial lawyer. And it was, when I watched that final episode, I wasn't part of that conclusion in any way. Neither were the two anthropologists from the University of Pennsylvania. And I was screaming at the television. There was no match of DNA. I was there for the entire DNA testing the entire summer long, and the anthropologists had given up on DNA. They had decided that wasn't going to be how their decision was going to be made. It was going to be made on the dental records. And when that came up, that final episode, it was almost shocking to the point where if you go back and research now that conclusion that history made about the DNA, and then if you go 2 days later to the interview that Rolling Stone magazine made with the two anthropologists, and they admit there was no DNA match, I still don't understand how it stayed on television. I still don't, and that's why I'm in the process right now of trying to get a network to allow me to put the evidence out as I would in a court of law, and as treating the audience as the jury, and let them make their own decision. Because when we were digging that grave up, we came on two graves side by side. The crafty little devil bought two graves.
Uh-huh.
One was the standard 8-foot depth. One was 2 feet deeper, 10 feet to the side. The one we dug first came to an empty coffin. All right?
Right.
The type of wood pine box that was used to transport bodies across the United States on trains.
Uh-huh.
The kind that he would have called his boy in New York to arrange a substitute corpse for.
Uh-huh.
And we came on, it was empty. And I'm there, we're digging, there's scientists all over, there's helicopters flying around us during the exhumation. It was quite an interest. And I've got a CIA investigator down in the grave with the two anthropologists, and we got film crews recording everything, and we have an empty pine box, and they just kind of brushed it off. And I'm thinking, wait, let's go back and figure out, what was this man doing that he needed this box here?
Uh-huh.
Something happened here. This wasn't just a Halloween ornament. And then we dug deeper. We found the concrete sarcophagus.
Uh-huh.
We opened it up, and we find the body with a bowler hat, with a jacket, with boots. It was an amazing discovery, which at that time was just they were trying to get it over with as quickly as they could and have the show stop. Because what had happened was we had budgeted the exhumation, and I think there was around $100,000 to go down with the scientists to arrange to retrieve the evidence we could find. Well, as we were digging, and you didn't get to see this on the show, the walls for the two graves next to it started collapsing in on us of the other bodies. The innocent bodies there from another death. And the judge had made clear in his order that was not to happen, or he was going to have people's hides over this.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
We called in engineers. They were shoring up with these modern technology and making sure the walls were there and this and that, and it started going up and up and up and up, and then the DNA didn't start matching, and then the evidence we found out that the neck vertebra had no trauma.
Yeah.
If you watch the end of American Ripper, you'll see I asked the one anthropologist, was there any evidence that this body was hung by the neck until dead?
Nope.
And she admits no, but then she says, well, that doesn't mean it wasn't hung. And I said, well,
yeah, you could strangle, I guess, but wouldn't it?
I asked her, did you go back and research what the two prison doctors recorded that day? No. And that was cut out. And if you go back and if you check out the records, the prison records from the two prison doctors, they'll tell you the neck was broken. And they identify the two vertebrae where the split occurred. It wasn't the same body. It wasn't the same body.
No, because there's when people were hung, at any period of time, there's two ways of people dying when they're hung. One is an immediate drop, where the trapdoor, comes out from underneath you and the sudden jolt literally snaps your neck. And then there's the other horrible, long-lasting one where you literally just strangled to death. And from what I remember, all the transcripts said that Holmes was dropped. And that would have meant his neck would have been snapped. And there would have been a noticeable break in the vertebrae if that had happened. And yeah, it didn't look like it had indeed happened. So with that being the case, with professionals, stating their opinion based on what they looked at, that this person did not die from a snapped neck, then how did this person actually die? There's the conundrum.
Well, and when you go back and read the newspaper accounts of the execution, and it was done with a black hood. The body drops through the scaffolding. It's an 8-foot drop. It reaches the end of the rope with a violence that causes a snap that they all described like a gunshot. Okay?
Yeah.
There was so much energy involved, Kat, that the body rebounded up in the air. They described this on the newspaper accounts.
Oh,
okay,
my
this
God.
wasn't just some guy. This wasn't you read some of the books out now about the Holmes, and they talk about him kicking his feet and dying after 15 minutes.
That's strangulation. That's strangulation.
That wasn't what happened. And the two doctors admit that. The two prison doctors actually state that wasn't what happened. They were describing how a snake, when you cut the head off a snake, how the body still twitches. And they said the death was due to a broken neck. That's on the records. So when I asked her in the show, and this is a great part about it, I was actually surprised that this was on American Ripper. When I asked Dr. Cox about Dr. Fox, excuse me, although Cox is Amaryllis. I asked her about the neck and why isn't there any trauma to a body that was hung and died of a broken neck? And you saw her answer. And my mistake at that point right then is I should have put my foot down. I should have demanded, wait a minute. I love these two anthropologists. The UPenn is a great institution. These two ladies were awesome to work with. They're very intelligent. They had PhDs in anthropology, archaeology, everything. And the judge just, thought they were the greatest. I should have demanded, wait. We've got a situation here now that's not an archaeological dig anymore. This is a crime scene investigation. I need an FBI investigator here that says, wait. If the neck isn't broken, if there's no sign of a trauma by hanging, we've got to back up. We've got to find out what happened then.
So he was on the platform, hands tied behind his back, and then they put the hood on him?
Well, if you go back, great question. If you go back and read the 7 or 8 different newspaper accounts, and I've got a great a guy that helps me out with this stuff, Anthony Saletti, and he finds me every different newspaper article that was ever written on that hanging, because I've read them all. If you read each one, you'll be amazed at how each newspaper account of the hanging is different. All right, and you can see where, as an author, as a historian, writing a book about a historical account like that, at some point you've got to make your mind up. You've got to pick one, because we weren't there and we don't have a video. Yeah. So the Holmes reportedly walked up to the rail, and he made a little speech even. Now, one of the reporters on his account says, that's not the one I recognize as Holmes. He even writes that in his newspaper report. The others didn't say anything like that, nothing like that. And they were big newspaper accounts, New York Times, Chicago Sun, all those big ones. Now, the doctor that examined him after thought that he looked very, very strange. He made an account that he looked very, very strange. The face was different than he remembered. So but then all the historians will tell you that's because he had a rope embedded in his neck that they had to cut out with knives to get out of the flesh. It was so violent.
Say what?
Well, that could be true. That could be true. I guess the rope might get stuck in the flesh because of something like that.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these different accounts. All I know is, and I don't know how to add them all up. All I know is the hanging was done with a black hood, and the prison superintendent refused them an autopsy and refused them removing the hood.
Okay.
Well,
The same guy that committed suicide 2 months later.
Now, at the risk of sounding really, really morbid here, if you exhumed a cement-filled vault or a coffin, would that not have prevented a lot of decomposition of the body originally if it had been buried right away?
It did. It did. One of the arguments I have with the scientists now is, wait, we have a body encased in concrete. We still have mustache. We still have intact molars, which if you've been following the news at all, in London, they just found the body of Richard III under some parking lot outside of London, and they identified it with one of the molars. They got the DNA out of the intact molar.
Right.
I said, we had 7 or 8 intact molars on this thing. I was there when the 2 anthropologists were on the phone with King's College in London who did all the DNA testing. They're the number 1 in the world. And the 2 anthropologists said, hey, do you want us to give you a molar for your DNA? And they said, no, we don't need it. We want you to roll the skull over. On the back of the skull, there's a bone pocket, a porous bone pocket, I guess we all have. And they used this diamond drill bit. And I watched them dig down into the skull. They got some powder out of the back of the skull. They packaged it and mailed it off. And everyone was thrilled. It was a 3 to 5 day test. And this was in May. We didn't have DNA in August results. And then the anthropologists gave up on it.
Oh, my God.
And all of a sudden you see that conclusion on American Ripper.
And an intact molar would have done far more.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like reading all the accounts now from Richard III, and what they're doing in London, it seems like it would have. And then to answer your question better, though, when we were all planning the next day's shoot, I snuck back into the lab because, at that point, there was no one there on my side of this. They all thought it was Holmes. They all thought this was for TV. I was the only one, including Amaryllis, I was the only one that thought it wasn't him in the grave. We hadn't done any of the tests. We hadn't come to any of those conclusions. So I snuck back in, and I was thinking of Hamlet and Shakespeare. So I went and I grabbed the skull, and I brought it up to my face, and I wanted to, do a little face-to-face with dear old great-great-grandpa. And they caught me doing it, and they were yelling that I was contaminating the DNA and the skull, and they took it out of my hands. But as they did, his brain flopped in my hand, and I said, wait, the brain's still there. And they said, that's impossible. They grabbed it out of my hand. The 2 anthropologists rolled it over and were juggling it like a basketball in their hands, and it did. The brain was still there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then why in the heck didn't they do a test on that?
They said it was mush. They didn't. They said it wasn't. It's a good question, but they said it was like a mush.
Oh, come on. With the advent of all the various different ways of testing tissue, you can get DNA from just about anything. It isn't just hair follicles and bone marrow and digging into the teeth. You can get DNA from a lot of things. They have it now as mitochondrial DNA, which you can get from a source that doesn't even have a root to it. So I'm sorry, but that really bothers me, that they weren't willing to take whatever tissue and do a more definitive. But then again, whoever has the purse strings.
Well, and you know what? You also got to remember you had the UPenn, the anthropologists there. They took this account of a Chicago, another Chicago coincidence, a Chicago oral surgeon at Holmes's request goes to examine him before the execution at Moyamensing prison. Okay.
Oh, that's not,
I'm the only one that'll jump on that. I'm the only one that'll jump on that one too. If I had Holmes up on cross-examination, why did you request this guy? And why didn't you just allow the prison doctor to examine you? What's the difference? What he's going to measure you, how tall you are, all those things, the physical examination. So anyway, they bring the Chicago doctor. He writes out this report, and in this report it's a photograph of two dental casts, wax casts of teeth, okay? And in the report, and you can go to Google and grab this if you want. It's Dr. Talbot is his name, and you can Google it right up and read his physical examination of Holmes. He says of Holmes. And then he describes the teeth that he saw that day in the prison cell, reportedly. So the anthropologists thought this was conclusive evidence. They had what they thought were dental records. The dentistry department at the UPenn compared them with the bone, the teeth that we had from the skull, and they said that matched. And all this other stuff, that the neck wasn't broken, the DNA didn't match, the skeleton was too short. One of the anthropologists admitted to me off camera that it was too short. So, but they said the dental records match. And I was there, and, you guys have seen the picture of me. I pulled all my hair out. And on film, I said, this is what he did for a living. He used to falsify dental records with wax casts to fake insurance.
Well, gee, why didn't they figure out that there was a connection? Duh.
At that point, they thought I was off on a wild conspiracy theory.
No. I mean, nowadays, if you were to really look at the connection, that's the first thing that I would look at was, well, hey, Holmes did insurance fraud. This dentist did, or this person that did the examination perpetrated insurance fraud. Where is their connection? There's just too many what ifs. You got to scratch your head and say, well, this person was a master at what he did. Not only did he murder, a number of people in his lifetime, but he did so for profit. He influenced so many people. He seduced many women in his lifetime. And at the very end of his life, he made a great deal of money within a very short period of time from, the newspapers and journalists and everything. Why is it so hard to believe that he couldn't have orchestrated his own fake death and lived out his life at some point someplace else with the help of his accomplices? Why is that so hard to believe for anybody?
I can't tell whether or not he's a Bond villain or a Batman villain.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. The both. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. I tell you, and then I've got a great friend, Vanessa Hogel, who she does wax casts for a living. She's done them for 20 years before oral surgeries. And she tells me from the photographs, you can tell that those were taken from a corpse. They weren't from a living body.
Yeah.
So here's it's too bad that there's statute of limitations, but wouldn't it be great to be able to go back and try the conspirators that faked this whole false death?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that direction before I got the world to accept that it's not the body in the grave first.
Okay.
And you know, because I'm already out there on the edge, and they all think that I'm trying to have a movie made and stuff. So, but I think we're very close. I'm waiting. I would like to give. I've got a network that's interested in maybe letting me tell the world the true story of the exhumation. But I'd really, to tell you the truth, none of this would have been done if it wasn't for history, if they hadn't spent the money, if they hadn't taken the chance, if they hadn't done everything that no one, you watch some of the television shows now on paranormal, on true crime, on archaeology. No one spends any money. It's just some expert's opinion in an interview, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And history was spending a lot of money on this. They did a lot of great things. I'd like to give them a chance to say, you know, we'd like to take a second look at this. I really would. And to let them have first account on correcting this error. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen here pretty soon.
Good.
But it's and then the other thing is that the two scientists admit, this was edited out of the show, that the skeleton was too short to be Holmes. That they measured it at 5'4" when off record they told me 5'2", when the police that arrested him in Boston and then this Chicago dentist that examined him measured him at 5'8".
Wow.
And they both admitted to me it doesn't shrink. It doesn't shrink. As a matter of fact, it should be taller, because scientists have to add in the cartilage and the tissue in between the bone joints, and it usually makes it taller than the actual body was.
Right.
So
you've got all these different components. You've got the strange grave. You got two graves. You got empty boxes. You've got concrete sarcophaguses, and it's just, to me, it's an amazing story that just it'd be fun to be able to get out there and tell it based on, direct evidence that would stand up in a court of law. I think that would there's not many shows like that in America on television anymore.
So besides Holmes, did any of those who helped him get charged for anything?
No. Not one.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder about that one too. I mean, because they probably didn't have enough so-called evidence to prove, and with all the money that he received and everything, he probably paid a number of people off to not say anything. And that's interesting. Now, another thing that you've got going on right now, Jeff, is the murder castle in Chicago. Right now, on that piece of property is a U.S. Postal building.
Yeah,
it's a U.S. Post Office now. And there is a basement area in this post office that people have not wanted anybody to go into. But you are trying to get in there. What's going on with that?
Well, I've been in there twice. I write about it in chapter 27 of Bloodstains, where, my best friend and I, Kim Estes, we talked the post office superintendent into allowing us to, who we were, and into allowing us to go down into the basement, which was boarded off. The employees did not go into the basement. They thought it was haunted. It was barricaded off. We had to wave our way through spider webs and the whole horror movie thing you see, if you can imagine that. We got down in this musty, gray, just ugly basement, long hallway, which also had some of the original Holmes tunnels that he had built in while he had the murder castle, that he was planning on using to escape law enforcement one day if he ever had to. He'd crawl out these tunnels under the street, then out the other way. He never had to. I tried to describe what I felt that day down in the basement. Because to tell you the truth, and I know you're all, this is the Paranormal View. You're part of, what are there, 65 million Americans that believe in supernatural in America and life after death?
Yeah.
It's a huge number. I didn't believe in any of that when we went down that day, but I tried to describe the energy I felt down in that basement. I went down again with Haunted History, another History Channel affiliate, with Adam Selzer, and we went down into the basement. But by then, the post office had prepared it, had cleaned it, they knew it was going to be on national television, so it wasn't the same place. I've long believed that if you ever had, like, the top-notch ghost hunters in the world, the ones that use all the top equipment, all the electronics, the ones that would pick up some type of energy if it actually existed, and went down with me, that if the paranormal was ever going to be proven, if the supernatural was ever going to be established, it's probably going to be at 63rd and Wallace in the basement of that post office where the murder castle was.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, for someone like yourself to make that kind of a statement, to say that you've gone into a location and felt this kind of energy, that says volumes about what might be there, because as you pointed out, those of us within the paranormal field, the places that we've been, the things that we've experienced, there's an energy in not only the locations, but around a person themselves. And for someone like Holmes, with his personality, with the things that he did, and everything that happened around him, there has to be an energy. And there's no way in heck that, no way in hell that any of us could go into a location like that and not pick up on something. And it really doesn't make any difference, Jeff, if we've got equipment with us or not. We're going to pick up on it. You can't, as a human being, it's a built-in something. It's built into our psyche, to where we're able to pick up on something that's going on. But for me personally, if I were to get together with you myself and go into one of these locations, whether it's the basement at the post office, or at that location where he murdered that poor little boy and everything, there is no way that I would not be able to pick up on the energy. So for someone like yourself that normally isn't into the paranormal, to pick up on that kind of energy, that says volumes. It's incredible. And to me, it's validation. And in the paranormal field, that's exactly what it is. Validation, validation, validation.
Well, I can only tell you, I felt something, and I didn't know what it was. It was just maybe chills for me being where my ancestor had done such horrible things, reportedly. You still find people that deny all those things still. I'd like to see if there was ever a chance that that energy could be established and, like you say, validated. I would think that might be the place to give it a shot. And it's I think while we were filming American Ripper, the whole crew was there, and you've got to remember, 63rd and Wallace in Englewood in Chicago is the war zone. It's a very dangerous place to be. People get shot there every weekend, and the cops go in to get cokes with full SWAT gear on.
Wow!
Oh wow!
It's tough. So we were there, and we were going to get in and out, but the director was filming. We had we were there at the little park next to the post office, which offsets where the castle and the post office lay next to each other, overlap. And I think I was told that the superintendent of the post office told American Ripper that he was not going to allow us to go down into the basement without federal authority from Washington, D.C. That's what I was told. I wasn't there when he said it. I don't know if that's what actually happened or not. But if we ever got a shot to ever go back down into the basement and have someone try to validate what you just described, I'd really like to be a part of it, because, man, what a that might make all my work, all my efforts with Holmes and Bloodstains and American Ripper worthwhile. And it might be, it might, and I think me being there might stimulate something. I don't know how that works, but it seemed to that day.
Trigger object.
Yeah, exactly.
Trigger object. Now, did you ever find, I mean, obviously you've been down there, but any physical evidence of anything happening in that basement yet?
No, it's completely U.S. Post Office, except on the one side of the wall of the foundation, you can see where someone in 1920s, 30s, 40s, when I think the post office was built it was during the Hoover administration. They built the post office there. Someone who knew what was on the other side, in the basement on the other side, had gone in and cut a doorway into the foundation of the post office basement. They had done their work, whatever it was on the other side, and this is how my mind works. I'm speculating about all the sinister going on. And then once they had finished what they had come to do, or obtained what they wanted on the other side, some treasure or some evidence of horrible things, they actually re-bricked it and then sealed it over, and you can see with different masonry than the original foundation was. And it's an amazing piece that I'd really love one day a crime scene investigator with the expertise to go down and take a look at.
Wow. Well, it sounds like whoever it was that did it got so freaked out they said, "Oh no, that's it. We're boarding it up. That's it. No more, close it up. Not happening." That's what it sounds like to me. Because some people, just flat out say, "Oh, nope, that's it."
Our time is quickly running on out, and if you guys got another quick question, please do so.
Well, here's the question for you, Jeff, because this is a paranormal show. Have you ever been contacted by the spirit of H.H. Holmes in any fashion?
No, other than that day in the basement, no.
You're probably glad of it, though, in many ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be, hi there, grandkid, here's a laundry list for you. Yeah.
I actually, the trial, the courtroom where he was tried is still there. And one day I snuck back in by myself while it was closed up and sat up in the jury box, hoping that it would happen, and it didn't. But I wanted to see if it would still happen, but no. I went into his house where he was raised as a little boy. I tried to go everywhere his history was, and I was surprised nothing happened like that. And this may, Kat, you may be able to jump in on this. When we dug that body up, when we got to the sarcophagus and opened it up and the body was there for the first time to see that ugly skeleton and skull, I was expecting to feel something then. Absolutely nothing.
No, I didn't either. I looked at that and I said, no, this is wrong. I felt that too. As soon as I looked at it, I thought, no, this is wrong. Something's off.
And Marillis told me the same thing. She was expecting something too, and she felt nothing.
Nope.
So how many total murders were there?
I don't know. If you want to go with the ones that can be actually proven, maybe 9 or 13. But like I say, he admitted to 27, but some of those were still alive after, his whatever happened out there at the prison and cemetery happened. But now, as you go back in history, Chicago historians are finally admitting, and Chicago police too, that hundreds went missing during the World's Fair, and scores stayed at the Holmes Hotel.
Wow.
And they went missing. And I mean, that's too much of a coincidence. I just don't buy that.
All right.
Yeah.
Our time, like I say, is quickly running out. I want you to give out all your information about the book and how they can follow you and contact you. But stay on until after we're off, and we'll thank you.
I tell you what, this has been a quick 2 hours. I've had a lot of fun, and
It always is. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's I'm just very appreciative of the ability that you give me to put my platform out for the people that want to have an open mind and consider the evidence as it is, and hopefully help me change history as it's written.
No problem. It's been a good show.
Thank you.
Listen, Jeffrey Gould, who is our guest next week?
Yes. Oh, I am. That is definitely a Tabby department.
Oh. All right, Tabby, who's our guest next week?
Okay, next week we have Michael and Marty Perry. They are a husband-wife team, and Marty, who is a psychic artist, and Michael, who is a very recognizable psychic medium. And conjunction, they have conducted so many wonderful investigations with absolute detail, and we are looking forward to talking to them next week.
All right. That sounds great. We got less than a minute, so I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show, and we will see you next week, people, at the same time, so please join us then. And until then, this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
Barbara Duncan.
Cat Cash.
And we will see you next week. So everyone have a great weekend. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.